Today we continue with the sixth of the 8 streams of suffering, the fear of losing loved ones. The fear of losing loved ones refers to the suffering that arises when one cannot be with one's loved ones and must part from them, which brings excruciating pain. The Abhidharma Mahavibhasa Sastra says, "When pleasant circumstances are parted from us, it leads to many sufferings. Thus, it is called the suffering of being separated from what one loves." This occurs everywhere in the world. Sometimes, a couple deeply in love must separate when their bond has worn thin. If one of them cannot accept this, they may become overwhelmed with despair, leading to irrational actions, including suicide. In fact, when we understand the nature of this type of suffering, we will not be affected as deeply. As you should know, there is universal love and partial love. The former refers to unconditional love for all sentient beings, while the latter refers to romantic love or lust, which brings suffering and only leads to pain until one recognizes its nature. It is only when the attachment to an individual is eliminated that sorrow, fear, and anger cease to arise. The Mahaparinirvana Sutra says, "From love arises worry. From love arises fear. If one is free from love, what worry and what fear can there be?" Many people live with worries about gain and loss, often due to their attachment to loved ones. Because of this strong obsession, they lead perplexed lives, become completely lost, and waste their time. Those who understand the nature of this suffering will redefine their pursuits in life. Therefore, when studying the words of my perfect teacher, you should also learn about the world to better guide beings onto the path. Many people today feel disoriented. It is challenging for them to detach from the things they are obsessed with, further perpetuated by social trends. Some young people are particularly fixated on relationships, money, and possessions, which is concerning. Although this attachment can be tormenting, they are unable to free themselves and instead hold on tighter. To be free from these attachments, one can only rely on the power of Dharma. If one can recognize the nature of the mind or fully understand the illusory and impermanent nature of everything in this world, one can easily transform all suffering into a means for the path of enlightenment. In fact, spiritual wealth is far more important than material wealth for each of us. While material wealth can alleviate poverty, it cannot dispel mental pain. On the other hand, spiritual wealth, particularly the Buddha's teachings on renunciation, letting go of self-attachment, realizing emptiness, understanding impermanence, and more, can make a person who embraces these teachings the happiest in the world. This holds true for everyone, regardless of identity, ethnic group, or nationality. Many of you may look similar in terms of attire and appearance, but some of you are able to assimilate and embrace the Buddha's great compassion and the wisdom of emptiness. This is a result of your faith from previous lives, diligent effort in this life, and favorable circumstances. Those who have internalized the Buddha's teachings will always remain carefree and live happily, regardless of where they are and what they do, whether propagating the Dharma, benefiting sentient beings, or confronting the inevitable challenges of aging, illness, and death. Of course, before reaching the first bodhisattva stage, ordinary people will inevitably experience certain suffering, both physically and mentally. Those who have studied the Dharma will not be as attached to their pain as those who have not. Once, a fellow villager from my hometown visited me and spent a considerable amount of time sharing family matters with deep emotion. After he left, a Khenpo, who was also present, remarked, "These worldly people are clinging too much. Indeed, they believe that fame, wealth, and relationships are inherently real, leading them to hold on to them tightly. As a result, their attachment to what they perceive as real brings genuine harm and obstacles. Many people are wandering at the crossroads of their lives, unsure of which direction to take. Therefore, we must guide them to study the Dharma so they can pursue the bright path of life from the depths of their hearts. The most meaningful and valuable path, without question, is the Mahayana path. If you have already embarked on this journey, you should proceed with unwavering determination until you reach your destination. Throughout this journey, even if you encounter various obstacles and difficulties, do not give up. The fear of losing loved ones. In this world of samsara, we feel attached to those we relate to and hostile toward others. For the sake of our family, friends, partners, and community, we are often willing to endure significant hardship. Yet, none of these relationships last forever. Eventually, we are separated, whether through death, distance, or threats from enemies or other dangers. The pain they experience often affects us even more deeply than our own. Parents, in particular, worry endlessly about their children, fearing they might be cold, hungry, sick, or even die. Why should we repay the immense kindness of our parents? It is because they have done so much for us that they are set apart from others. The Sutra on the Profound Kindness of Parents and the Difficulties in Repaying Them, translated by Kumarajiva, introduces 10 kinds of parental kindness, each explained in 2 verses. One of the verses goes like this: a 100-year-old mother still constantly worries about her 80-year-old son. When will her love and care cease? It will only be when her life comes to an end and she is separated from her son by death. Even when a mother is 100 years old, she still worries about her son, who is 80, wondering, is he in good health? Will he face any obstacles? Will he not come back again? Unless she dies and leaves this world, no matter how old or sick she becomes, she will not stop caring about her son. Parents love their children so deeply that they would rather face death themselves than see their kids suffer, enduring a great deal of pain because of this. However, even though we experience deep suffering from the fear of being separated from our loved ones, we should reflect on this carefully. Therefore, we do not need to analyze interpersonal relationships through the logical arguments of the middle way, such as neither one nor many, or refuting existent or non-existent results. A simple investigation using reasoning alone can reveal that relationships are a cause of our suffering. Yet, due to clinging that has existed since beginningless time, sentient beings are often unaware that attachment to loved ones may stem from unwholesome connections in previous lives. As a result, it becomes difficult for beings to free themselves from these attachments. Here is a story from the Dhammapada. A Brahmin had a son who died of illness at the age of 7. The Brahmin was so heartbroken that he decided to retrieve his son from Yama, the Lord of Death. He inquired about how to reach the underworld. A group of Brahmins told him, when a person is still alive, he usually cannot see Yama. However, if you insist, you may travel 200 miles westward until you reach a great river. The city by the river is where divine spirits stay during their inspections of the human realm. On the 8th day of every month, Yama passes through that city. As long as you adhere to the fasting prescriptions, you should be able to see Yama. The Brahmin endured many hardships and finally encountered Yama. He pleaded with Yama to bring his son back to life, and Yama replied, "Your son is playing in the East Garden. If he wishes, you can take him back with you." The Brahmin was so overjoyed that he rushed to the East Garden. But when his son saw him, he did not even bother to greet him. Instead, he scolded the Brahmin. "You foolish old man, I merely lived in your house temporarily as your son. Now that I have other parents here, you'd better abandon your unrealistic wish and leave at once." Overcome with grief, the Brahmin departed in tears. After returning home, the Brahmin could not understand why this was happening, so he sought an answer from the Buddha. The Buddha said, "You are truly foolish. When someone dies, their spirit departs and takes on a new form. Father and mother, wife and child come together due to certain circumstances, much like a guest who arrives and then leaves. The Buddha continued with teachings on the fear of losing loved ones, and the Brahmin immediately understood. He became a monk following the Buddha and eventually attained arthood. The sutras offer many profound insights about life. If we can grasp them, we will be free from experiencing excruciating suffering. Otherwise, when we are parted from a loved one, we will struggle to bear the loss, feeling as if it is the end of the world. Even when such a loss occurs to others, we still find it challenging to come to terms with it personally. The reason many stories and films are so poignant and popular is that their plots are heart-wrenching, which is directly tied to the fear of losing loved ones. Take, for example, the story of Lady Meng Jing. During the reign of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, people were forcibly recruited from everywhere to work on the construction of the Great Wall. Shortly after getting married, Lady Meng Jing's husband was also taken away, leaving them separated with no means of communication. Lady Meng Jing missed her husband day and night, so she prepared some winter clothes and set out to find him herself. When she reached the Great Wall, she inquired about her husband at each station and finally received the devastating news that he had died of hunger and fatigue and that his corpse was buried beneath the wall. Based on historical accounts, many people died of fatigue while building the Great Wall, and their corpses were buried on the spot. Therefore, I kept chanting the Mani mantra when I visited the Great Wall. As I looked at the bricks, I wondered, are there corpses buried beneath here? Lady Meng Jing wept for 3 days and 3 nights, and her tears even touched heaven and earth. Then, suddenly, a section of the Great Wall collapsed, revealing her husband's corpse. There is a similar Tibetan story. Once there was a woman in Gola whose husband went to war and never returned. She wept every day and eventually became mentally ill. In her sorrow, she began to sing many elegiac songs spontaneously. Each song had deeply touching lyrics, perhaps because they came from the depths of her heart. This story is very popular in the Tibetan region. When I was a child, many elders shared it with me. Upon hearing the story, I felt her attachment was a great misery. A few years ago, a popular film called The Knot was released. I did not watch the film, but someone shared the plot with me. In the 1940s, 2 young Taiwanese fell in love and married. Later, due to political turmoil, the husband went to mainland China and enlisted as a soldier in the Korean War under a different name. During that time, he met a battlefield nurse and eventually married her for various reasons. His Taiwanese wife remained faithful to him and cared for his mother as her daughter-in-law. Meanwhile, she began a long and hopeless wait for her husband. Eventually, she managed to hold an exhibition of her paintings in mainland China. With the help of her foster daughter, she learned that her husband had died many years earlier in an avalanche in the Tibetan region. By that time, she had been waiting for nearly 60 years. This film was based on the novel Stories in Taiwan, and several well-known actors and actresses from mainland China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong portrayed the characters. In 2006, it ranked 8th on the list of highest-grossing films in China. It is said that many viewers were moved to tears while watching it. The great Jigme Phuntsuk Rinpoche briefly stayed in Hong Kong during his trip to India in the early 1990s. At that time, several lay practitioners in Hong Kong praised the film, My Beloved. It was about a psychiatrist who returned to his homeland after studying abroad and encountered a patient who turned out to be the mother he had lost 18 years earlier. The main theme glorified the idea that a mother is the best in the world. It depicted the profound kindness and love of a mother. It was a very touching film that brought many viewers to tears. The most poignant parts of the film were the scenes depicting the reunion and separation of the mother and son. From a Buddhist perspective, this reflects the fear of losing loved ones, as described in the sutras. There are many other similar stories, such as that of the cowherd and the weaver girl, among others. Many of these tales explore attachment in romantic relationships. Because they have not realized the concept of emptiness, these individuals do not understand that all gatherings and separations are subject to causes and conditions. Thus, when they experience the loss of a loved one, they suffer tremendously. When their suffering is portrayed in films, the audience feels a strong sense of empathy. However, from the perspective of those well-versed in Dharma, these stories simply illustrate circumstances linked to karma, which are not worth clinging to. Here is a story from A Forest of Pearls from the Dharma Garden, a Buddhist encyclopedia in Chinese. A woman's husband died from a venomous snake bite, yet she appeared indifferent and showed no signs of grief. People found this strange and asked her, "Why aren't you crying out of sadness?" She replied, "Husband and wife are like birds in the forest. They come together when affinity is present, and part ways when it is exhausted. Therefore, I do not feel sad." Later, her words became a popular adage in the Han region, stating, "Husband and wife are birds of the same forest, but when disaster strikes, they fly separately." As you can see, a couple's union is a result of temporary affinity. Due to the differences in their karmas, once disaster strikes, they will part ways. The Vinaya also states, "All care and love are with you for a long time. They must leave at the end of your life. Those who stay under a tree for the night will eventually fly away. So will your wife, children, followers, and friends." The guru-disciple or teacher-student relationship is the same. When I was at the teacher training school, we had 9 classmates from Longchen Nyingtik Autonomous Prefecture. Their duration of study was only 2 years, while ours was 4 years. So when they left 2 years later, our class of over 30 students hugged them tightly and could not bear to let them go. When we saw them off early in the morning, we embraced them while weeping loudly. Later, our teacher scolded us saying, "The bus is arriving soon. They already have their tickets. You all have to let them go." Then the rest of us had to send them to the train station in tears, attracting a lot of attention from other passengers. Why did we feel so sad? Because we had not yet studied the Buddha's teachings on the fear of losing loved ones. The audience laughs. As Patrul Rinpoche says, are we really sure that our loved ones care for us as much as we think they do? Take our parents, for example. They say they love us, but their love can often be misguided and end up causing harm. By focusing on giving us wealth, property, or arranging our marriage, they only deepen our attachment to samsara and make it harder for us to break free. Often a senior layperson would approach me and ask, "Dear Lama, please bestow your blessings. My child is nearly 30 years old and will expire soon." Recently, someone called me saying, "Dear Lama, what should I do? My family's transmission has broken." Because she began by discussing her study of the Way of the Bodhisattva, I initially thought her transmission of the text was broken. It took me a while to understand that what she really meant was that her family line was broken. Parents teach us various things: how to outsmart our rivals, care for our friends, make money, and pursue paths that keep us trapped in endless suffering in the lower realms. It could not be more harmful. For instance, many parents teach their children how to hunt and eat animals such as snakes, shrimp, frogs, and so forth. When I witness such scenes in a restaurant, I feel deeply saddened. While parents undoubtedly have good intentions for their children, what they are teaching may actually cause harm rather than benefit to their children's present and future lives. The unwholesome actions they impart can potentially trap their children in the lower realms of samsara. To inflict real harm upon a person, it is not necessary to physically hurt them with weapons. In fact, the misguidance they experience over the years can have lasting and devastating effects on their present lives and many lives yet to come. It goes without saying that parents do not intend to cause harm to their children. However, due to their ignorance and the influences of the external environment, worldly education, and other factors, parents often engage in negative behaviors that bring harm to their children. Children raised in such circumstances learn only to commit misdeeds. In addition to these behaviors, they fail to develop virtuous values such as compassion. Sometimes, when a child expresses a desire to study the Dharma, take ordination, or engage in virtuous actions because their merit roots have sprouted, the parents become unhappy and do everything in their power to prevent the child from pursuing these goals. Alas, the parents' mindsets and actions are unwholesome and misguided. As a result, they not only fail to benefit their children, but may even harm them. Many people claim that parents are the best, a sentiment with which we Buddhists do not disagree. As stated in the sutras, parents have done so much for their children, and therefore, children should repay their kindness. However, we should not be overly attached to our parents either. Once someone told me, if my mother were to die, I would not want to live another day. I would definitely commit suicide. Whenever I think of my mother's death, I feel mentally overwhelmed. That being said, when his mother actually dies, it is uncertain whether he will truly commit suicide. Nevertheless, his thoughts reveal that he does not understand the nature of samsara. Similarly, parents should not become too attached to their children, believing that their children are completely devoted to them. You should know that genuinely filial children are few and far between. So how do many others treat their parents? As Patrul Rinpoche says, many children, whether boys or girls, seem to take everything from their parents. In the beginning, they suck the essence out of their parents' bodies. As they grow, they take their parents' food, and later, their money. Despite their parents' love, they often rebel against them. Many parents work hard throughout their lives to save money, enduring challenges and criticism, only to give it all to their children without hesitation. Yet they rarely show gratitude. Even when parents provide their children with a fortune, the children appreciate it less than a stranger would value a small gift, like a pinch of tea. They assume that everything their parents own is automatically theirs. Siblings often fight and compete with each other just to get a bigger share of the inheritance, unwilling to give an inch. No matter how much their parents give, they show no gratitude. And even if the parents have already given everything they have, the children still keep demanding more. Sometimes, even a single fake turquoise used for counting on a rosary is shamelessly taken by them. Normally, children do not care about their parents. Once the parents are dying, they come back one by one to ensure their parents' property will not be taken away by others. Even if the parents give their property to their children, the children will not feel grateful and instead will still want more. Such situations occur in both Tibetan and Han regions. I was told of a wealthy individual who placed his parents in a very shabby house. Even worse, when someone gifted his parents a television, he remarked, "Your eyesight is too poor to watch TV, so I will take the television with me. We young people enjoy watching TV." His parents had no choice but to let him take the television away. In fact, parents often become angry when treated unkindly by their children. Recently, I visited several nursing homes for seniors with various conditions, both good and bad. One common observation was that many seniors were unsociable. When I knocked on some residents' doors, they initially refused to come out. And when they finally opened the door, they only complained about everything. They believed that everyone was dishonest and untrustworthy. Even when we offered them gifts with loving kindness, they still did not trust us. Why were they like this? It is likely because their children, whom they once trusted the most, have abandoned them. So who else is worthy of their trust? Understanding this, parents do not have to become too attached to their children. As Patrul Rinpoche says, at best, children might contribute to others' success, but bring nothing to their parents. If things go wrong, they may return home, bringing shame and sorrow to the family. As for other relatives and friends, they treat us like we are gods as long as we are doing well. They offer help and give us things we do not even need. But when life takes a turn for the worse, even though we have done them no harm, they turn against us, treating us like enemies and responding to kindness with hostility. Thus, we should not become too attached to our children, family, or friends. Jataka Stories of the Bodhisattva states, wealth and prosperity are the source of many sufferings. Having a family and affection is akin to being in a prison. Wealth and prosperity are impermanent, and if we cling to them, they will lead to various sufferings. Kinship and affection are also illusory, and if we cling to them, we will only trap ourselves in the prison of samsara. People's attitudes toward relationships in society are quite pragmatic. A person may have had many people around them before retirement, but no one is there afterward. Someone who once had numerous supporters before retirement may find no one offering help afterward. The morality in our society is deteriorating. Many people, after leaving their official positions, often lament that once a person departs, the tea cools down. Therefore, if you can understand the relevant teachings of the Buddha, you will not become overly attached to many people and things. Here is a story from Sutra Lankara. A man named Sankabhata was born into a wealthy family, but as he grew up, the family's financial situation deteriorated, and they eventually became destitute. After this, all his relatives and friends neglected and even disparaged him, failing to treat him properly. Feeling dejected, Sankabhata left his hometown for another country in search of a livelihood. After years of hard work, he amassed a large fortune and set out to return to his hometown. When his relatives and friends heard the news, they immediately changed their attitude and waited along the road with food and flowers. Aware of this, Sankabhata deliberately dressed in rags and mingled with the servants walking in front. During his time of great poverty, he was a young man. By the time he had acquired his wealth, he was already an old man, so nobody from his hometown could recognize him. His relatives and friends asked him, "Where is Sankabhata, the rich man returning to his hometown with a fortune?" He replied, "He is behind." They then asked those walking behind him, "Which one is Sankabhata?" "The one in front whom you just spoke to." The relatives and friends returned to him and asked, "Why did you do this?" He replied, "The Sankabhata you wish to see is on the camel behind me. When I was poor, you turned your backs on me, but now you come to welcome me in haste. In fact, you are not here to welcome me, but to welcome my wealth and property, which are on the back of the camel." Thus, compliments and respect from your relatives and friends may not be sincere. There may be a hidden agenda. A tulku went to America and lived there for 50 or 60 years before returning to his hometown. When he finally managed to come back, his relatives and friends were so excited, they made a great effort to welcome him. However, when the tulku returned, perhaps because he was a Dharma practitioner, he did not give any money to the crowd. He simply had a casual meeting with them. Then, when the tulku left, no one saw him off. Therefore, it is difficult to discern who is a friend and who is a foe in real life. Here is a story from the Tales of Effendi. When Effendi was governor, many people visited him regularly. One day, his neighbor asked, "You always have so many guests. How many friends do you have?" Effendi replied, "I will tell you the answer when I am no longer the governor." He was well aware that once he stepped down, he would not have as many so-called friends anymore. Consequently, Effendi felt there was no meaning whatsoever in clinging to family and friends. Milarepa offers valuable advice about severing attachments to family and friends. During his retreat practice in a hermitage cave, Milarepa once asked for alms and was invited to an elderly couple's home to accept their offerings. The couple noticed Milarepa was a practitioner and asked him, "Where are you from? Do you have a family?" Milarepa answered, "I left my hometown, so I do not have any family. I am just a beggar now." Upon hearing this, the couple said, "We do not have children either, so you can be our foster son. We have a piece of good land that you can work on. You can marry a good woman and then have a lovely son. By doing so, you'll soon have a family, relatives, and friends." Milarepa replied, "I need none of them. I cannot wait to forsake them." Then, Milarepa said, "At first, your son is like a delightful little god. You love him so deeply that it feels unbearable. In the middle, he fiercely demands his due. You give him everything you have, yet he is never satisfied. One day, he brings home another man's daughter, pushing his loving parents out of the house. When his father calls him, he does not bother to respond. When his mother calls him, he does not even hear her. In the end, he becomes like a stranger next door. You sacrifice yourself to nourish a swindler like him. How disheartening it is to raise your own enemies. I have shed this harness that binds us to samsara. I have no desire to have any of these worldly sons." The old couple continued, "It is true that a son may become an enemy, so you should have a daughter instead." Milarepa also continued to sing, "At first your daughter is like an enchanting little goddess, imperiously claiming all your best possessions. In the middle, she constantly demands her due. She openly requests things from her father, while secretly taking from her mother. Never content with what she receives, she becomes a source of anguish for her kindly parents. In the end, she is like a red-faced ogress. At best, she becomes an asset to someone else. At worst, she brings misfortune upon her own family. How exasperating she is, this ravaging monster. I have abandoned this incurable sorrow. I do not wish for a daughter who would lead me to ruin." The old couple did not give up, so they continued trying to persuade Milarepa, saying, "It does not matter if you have no children, but if you do not even have a relative, you will be bullied everywhere." Milarepa shook his head and sang, "At first, friends greet you with joyful smiles, filling the whole valley with cheerful invitations. Come in and sit down. In the middle, they repay your hospitality with meat and beer, item for item, perfectly tit for tat. In the end, they bring conflict, driven by hatred or attachment. How vexing are such evil friends with all their quarrels. I have chosen to forego dining companions from those carefree days. I no longer desire any worldly friends." This occurs in both Tibetan and Han regions. Initially, relatives and friends welcome you with immense joy and hospitality. However, as time goes on, they invoke the principle of reciprocity, expecting you to repay what you have received. Eventually, the relationship deteriorates and conflicts may arise. Such is the nature of our worldly relatives and friends, so there is no need to yearn for them. In short, we should not cling to sons, daughters, relatives, friends, and the like. This non-attachment is called renouncing this life. Although it is difficult to achieve, we practitioners must gradually detach ourselves from our attachment to loved ones, especially after understanding the fear of losing them. Otherwise, if you spend each day fixated on your children, parents, and friends, you will not have enough time to practice the Dharma. Consequently, loving kindness and great compassion will not emerge in your mind. Of course, it is unrealistic for lay practitioners to renounce everything and abandon their children, family, and relatives. Nevertheless, you should avoid excessive attachment. After all, gathering, dispersing, separating, and reuniting are constants in samsara. Understanding this, your practice will undoubtedly progress well. Otherwise, if, after practicing for a long time, you still feel such pain, or even prefer to die upon losing a loved one, it indicates that you are not a true practitioner. So please, meditate diligently on the fear of losing loved ones.